Hello. Hi, Edwin. How are you doing?
Hey, Alex.
Awesome. Good
I'm
to
good.
know.
I'm great. So, welcome to the Diversity Summit. As we're waiting for everyone else to join, I guess I could just do introductions and also ask you to introduce yourself. I'm Edwin Okolo. I'm a writer, I'm a journalist, and I'm a social critic. A lot of the work I do focuses on gender inequality, sexuality, and human rights. And I'm very interested in, talking on this panel about the many complexities of gender and how it relates to Nigeria in particular and Africa as a whole, and how there are a lot of important conversations about gender, our historical relationship with gender and our contemporary relationship with gender that we need to discuss. So, Alex,
Okay.
you
Thank
have the
you,
floor.
Edwin. My name is Alexandra. I am a non-binary entrepreneur, founder of Juju Pan African Limited, an Afrocentric handicrafts brand, and freelance video editor and aspiring filmmaker, storyteller slash leading hearts. Anyway, that's basically me in a nutshell. I'm also looking forward to the conversations we're going to have. I feel like this is one conversation that is not had enough, and I think I'm interested in seeing, the various angles that people will come from today. So yeah, that's how I feel. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. So I think everybody else is joining now. And while we wait for them to join, okay, I think Matthew is here. So hi,
Hi, can you
Matthew.
hear me?
Hi, Matthew.
Okay,
We can hear you.
finally.
We can hear you. So please, can you just introduce yourself to
Okay,
our audience today? Hi, Ross
person
is here
here
as
in
well. Hi, Ross.
Nigeria, and I identify as I see myself as an activist because of the work I do in the Nigerian LGBTQ scene. So yes, I'm an activist, and as Alex said, I'm looking forward to this conversation because I'm not really in touch with our history, and this is one of our problems in this contemporary age. We're not really in touch with our history to know that these identities existed then, and they still exist now. They are not just Western inventions, they are identities that we've always known in Africa. So it is important to do this so people would know that yes, we are queer and we've been here, and we are here and we will be here. Oh shit. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, no, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, hi. Thank you so much. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
Certainly. My name is Ross Murray. I am a senior director at the LGBTIQ advocacy organization GLAD. I live in the United States. I am here in New York with my very fake Christmas tree here behind me because we needed a little joy, so we put it up early. And GLAD works a lot with media representation for the LGBTIQ community. We work a lot with individuals who desire to tell their story, with reporters and news outlets, and also with entertainment, film and television, and even gaming and comic books. And so we've figured out that how people learn about our lives is through often either personal relationships or through the media representation that they see. And I'm very excited and thankful to be here with such a brilliant panel. So thank you for letting me join you all.
We have Kayode on the panel finally. Hi, Kayode.
Edwin's network is...
Can you hear me? No, I can hear you quite well. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, Kayode, please can you introduce yourself? Oh, Kayode is gone again. Okay. While we wait for Kayode to get back on the panel, we could just start the conversations. There is a lot of misconceptions around the idea of gender and sex. and we see these misconceptions play out in our lives across workspaces, interpersonal relationships. What is your personal experience? I'm throwing this out to everybody. What is your personal experience with how people relate gender versus sex?
Is anyone there?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, Matthew, we can hear you.
Alex, are you there?
Hi, Matthew, we can hear you.
Hi, Matthew, we can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh shit, I think the network is bad.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
We can hear you, Matthew. So I'll just throw the question out to everybody. What has been your personal experience with gender versus sex when you relate with other people, especially for those of us here in Nigeria?
Okay.
Alexandra, I'll let you go first.
All right. Okay. So my personal experience, the first thing that comes to mind was that recently a documentary I was featured in got back to my parents. I was yeah, nah, it's okay. It's all right. But it got back to them. In that documentary, I did not make any mention of my, sexuality or whatever. And then screenshots of my Instagram, my, what I look like right now, how I present, what, was also sent to them as like supporting evidence or whatever. But the thing is, neither of those things mention my sexuality. Like my images, how I present, and my gender expression does not, equal LGBT. It doesn't equal my sexuality. So ideally, one is not supposed to be able to tell what gender you are attracted to just by looking at you, no matter what it is that you present as. But you find that in today's society, people just, once they see maybe a masculine presenting woman or a femme, they just assume that, okay, this person is definitely queer in some way, this person is lesbian or gay, or, it's been my latest stressor, because it's not, there are people who are not, like, it's not my case, who might not be attracted to people of the same sex, who present in, who might want to present in ways that are attributed to the opposite sex or the other. You get what I'm trying to say. So I just feel like there is a very important need to separate the two, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's how I feel. Hi, Uche.
Uche,
your mic seems to be muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. It took a while for me to figure out how to maneuver the setting.
It's okay. It's all right.
I will answer your question, Edwin, as well. I got to hear all of Alex's response. Thank you. And I will confess, first of all, is I know this panel is a lot talking about non-binary and genderqueer identities, which I am not. I'm a cisgender person. And can hear you, Edwin. And one of the things that's been important to me is how to learn how to be non-gender, and genderqueer. And so I have been listening and learning exactly how to work with and support people. And then when I'm representing them in front of family or friends, to make sure I can do that in a way that is very and I think that's part of the work for our allies, and part of the people. Edwin, we cannot hear you again.
Very curious about how media representation actually factors into how gender non-binary people and genderqueer people are perceived by audiences. Because in Nigerian cinema, the predominant representation of non-binary people and genderqueer people is as witches or as people who have mental health challenges. So how can we essentially use media to correct those misconceptions?
That's a great question. I think one of the things that we have found has been in the history of media that anything that breaks that very gender binary norm has historically been cast as either a villain or as a and both of those have been for transgender people, for non-binary, anyone that doesn't conform to gender expectations. And they have often been someone that is supposed to laugh at, or is supposed to feel. And that has been so bred into people since the beginning of the moving image, so more than 100 years of representation like this, meaning that is what people know. In the United States, 90% of Americans say that they know someone who's gay or lesbian. Only 20% say they actually have a relationship with someone who's transgender or gender. And that means when they don't know that, what they see in the media becomes the truth. And that means when they don't know that, what they see in the media in the last few years, that has started to change. And that in the last few years, that has started come up perhaps in the last 3 years of actors who are non-binary playing characters who are non-binary, which has helped to build that understanding. But still, there are so few that you take away very few characters, and all of the expectations of a very diverse group falls on a very small handful of fictional characters and actors. And if they're great portrayals, it's helpful. But if they are bad or problematic or something is wrong, there's nothing better to correct it. And so the way you solve that is to get more. There's nothing and to get more to correct it. And so the way you solve that is to get more. And so people can see and to get hear more and explore the diversity and I think we're on the path to a learning curve about that. And understand that. And I think we're on the path to a learning curve about that. And like Alexandra said, there is such a, and we're trying to tell people still those are separate things. Sexuality we talk about them and that gender identity are the same thing, and we're trying to tell people those are separate things. We talk about them, we have to learn that in the context of separately, and they all make up kind of complex figure. But we have to learn that in the context of or gender non-conforming person. What kind of complex figure a non-binary or
Kayode, I have a question for you specifically. You work. Hi, Kayode.
Awesome. Kayode, I have a question for you.
Activism. Okay, Kayode, please can you turn mute your mic until you have to speak? It's echoing. Okay, awesome. So you work in activism, which means that you essentially have to have on the field experience with people who are genderqueer and non-binary, and you see firsthand the kind of discrimination that they face, especially within the LGBT community. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Let me just to be sure to get the question. Can I talk on how what exactly? Sorry.
So I said, as somebody who is
an activist, you have experienced firsthand how genderqueer, non-binary, and trans people are discriminated against by other people in the LGBT community.
Okay.
So how has your experience been with that? And what do you think we can do to solve that?
I would say it's this kind of would I say selfishness or a lack of understanding or a lack of willingness to understand that, you know, cis people or cisgender people have in general. And these would I say like these selfishness. Let me just call it that. So let's just call it a lack of understanding. It extends even within the LGBTQ community. So there are, some certain individuals within the LGBTQ community that are always, when we talk of trans people specifically, and, also gender non-binary people, there is always this whole like, why can't we just fight for ourselves first? Or, why can't we deal with our own issues first? Or I don't understand why somebody will be this. I don't understand why somebody will be that. So it's this kind of, would I say, attitude or want for single issue activism, where they basically believe that, they fight for sexual minorities is different from that of gender minorities. So it's basically like, can't we, focus the entire community's activism just on, gay people, gay men, lesbians, bisexual, pansexual people? Can't we just do that? Why do we have to, add all these novel kind of, because there's this kind of suppression of identity that they have, where even within the queer community, trans people and non-binary people don't always feel safe, disclosing their gender identity, or, it's always this whole, they don't even know if they're going to be accepted. They don't even know if they're going to be ridiculed, because there is always this, and I see this within my work. There's this level of, even if they don't actually, like full out invalidate, trans people and non-binary people's gender identity, there's this kind of ridicule of, mockery of, oh, this is just like a plaything, or, this is this novel kind of, plaything that people do, or a preference that people take on to be trendy. There is a continued essentialist view of gender that still exists within the community, where they basically see gender as something that is either man and woman, like from birth. And if you are saying that no, this is not what my gender identity is, then you are basically somebody that chose to be something different just so you can be special or something like that. So that's kind of like the would I say the environment that exists, and it's kind of reinforced by the narratives we have from like the almost like every like I don't know 2 weeks on social media. We have this whole debacle where everybody's just trying to litigate the validity of the gender identity of trans people and non-binary people. We're like discussing of and it kind of makes it a situation where people are having opinions. I feel like, this is something that they are supposed to, have opinions on. And, it reduces like, the trans members of the community to kind of, would I say, pariahs within the community, that everybody can now decide, do we want to accept these people? What do we think about these people? What do we think about the validity of their gender? It's very invalidating. And to speak to the solution for that, I feel like a lot of the discussions we have on gender identity and itself, it's influenced by cis people that aren't even within the LGBTQ community at all. It's mostly from people that are just activists for other issues, basically, that don't actually like take the LGBTQ community into consideration. Because if you actually took the LGBT community into consideration, trans people have always been at the forefront of LGBT activism. They've always been the foremost fighters for queer liberation. Like, it doesn't matter which movement you actually look at, it has always, like, they have championed this movement. But when you have people that aren't even within the within the community kind of pushing these discussions, you have what's her name, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, for instance, being asked what she thinks about trans women. And the thing is, why are we having this discussion and having people that don't actually experience any of this life? Why are they the ones being asked to opine on the lives and the validity of, queer people. So that's like that contributes to the problem in media, because the media environment we have, it loves celebrity. So if you're a celebrity, you become just, de facto, you become the go-to for, questions on, the lives of minorities or the lives of marginalized communities. And so you're the one that's being asked, also, what do you think about these people? Or what do you think, these people's, do you agree? Do you agree with their identity, or, questions like that? And so that is part of the problem. But to look towards a whole, would I say, a whole, like a solution, we have to actually come together and understand that there is no gain in us trying to litigate people's identity for them. There is no gain in us coming together and deciding to preserve, the institution of heteronormativity that basically defines gender in essentially terms. This thing, not only do they hurt and invalidate, people that aren't cis, it also like contributes to harm towards, LGBTQ people that are cis, women, like even Black people within like the general kind of, international scene, where we are basically creating a hierarchy of identities, where you have cis people, up there, and then there are like trans people that.
Okay. Well, I think we've lost Kari very soon. So my next question is for Uche and Alex. I think I'm assuming here, but I think Uche and Alex are on two ends of the spectrum as regards labels, because labels are a significant part of the conversation around gender identity. Alex identifies as a boy, B-O-I, and Uche doesn't have a label, as so to speak. What is your relationship with labels? Uche and Alex, are you pro labels? Are you anti labels? What do you think of labels? Do you think it's restrictive? Do you think it helps you essentially delineate yourself from the much larger community?
Sorry for that. It's cut off just like that. Hello.
Hi.
Okay. I said I just asked another question while you went off. I was asking about labels because I know Uche doesn't ascribe to labels, and Alex identifies as a boy, B-O-I. So I wanted to find out what their relationship is with labels on both ends, and how, if they think that the conversation around labels has evolved enough for it to be useful to the LGBT community and the much larger community around gender identity. Alex, Uche, can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can totally hear you. I'm going to let Uche go first, because.
Okay, should I speak first?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question.
I don't know if you guys can hear. Just speak up.
Can you hear me, Kari?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Hi, Kari, can you hear me?
I can hear everyone. I get. So and
oh, okay.
When it comes to labels and the conversation and I did.
Okay, so I think I'll repeat Alex and Uche.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Alex, can you hear me? Okay. So let me repeat the question again. So as somebody who identifies as a boy, what informed your choice to choose this label? And do you feel that labels are vital to the conversation around gender identity, or do you think that it might be a little restrictive?
Okay. Thank you, Edwin. I think Uche was giving a response. I do you want to finish up?
I was saying education. Basically, I'm not too. I feel it's something. If you want labels, basically this whole around. It's I labels or your go without them. For me, I wouldn't say it's fair deciding general that it's restrictive because at the end of the day, it's an inch. If someone wants to go by, someone wants to go without. But the actual conversation, it's to us who don't want. For me, as men, confusion comes is in my passion. Passion. And I feel restricted because when it comes to my aesthetic as a human being, I feel that but then some people, I guess, so that's why I said it's if it's good person or the other is restrictive, but for the next person, why it has to be individual. We as a society, we have to collectively learn to respect what people have, and we have to do it. I want to place what you brought to it. You acceptance of. I feel that limiting. So
shit.
I feel to as a society choices it's to go with the labels or go without. So my and feel labels and them things their own decisions basically.
I'm just gonna completely agree with everything that Uche has said. I definitely think that your relationship with labels is a deeply personal one, and I think that society needs to shift from imposing society's views on the individual and start like respecting the individual for who they say they are and who they say they want to be. So prioritizing the individual means respecting what the individual's identity, and nobody knows a person's identity better than that person's self. So the concept labels for me are a way of affirming my identity. So I'm someone that likes labels, right, for myself, but I also understand why people would not want to adopt certain labels. There are people that might feel pressured into picking one label when life really doesn't. It's not necessarily a very linear process. You don't learn this one and then pick a label here and then get to a point and learn something. I'm trying to say that life is ever evolving, and sometimes people might shift from label to label, and that's people. You find people in society making comments like, why won't you just pick something? Why are you confused? But it's not confusion. It's part of the journey. It's the human experience, right? You might wake up today and decide, okay, this is how I feel. This is who I am. And then tomorrow you feel completely different. And it's your responsibility as an individual to validate your experiences, sometimes to name these things and say, this is what is happening to me right now. This is who I am. This is what I feel. And that's where labels come in for me. It's good for me to wake up in the morning and be able to look back on my life and say, okay, this happened because this I was experiencing gender dysphoria at this time, or because I don't actually fit into this, just the fact that there are words to express, different lived experiences. It makes me feel, it makes me feel affirmed. That's just it. So like when I came across the label non-binary and learned about the different gender identities that could be under the umbrella, it felt liberating for me, because my entire life I haven't felt 100% fully connected to the gender that I was assigned at birth. So the fact that I was able to eventually name that experience just took me into a whole other dimension of understanding of self that was important for me on my journey, was important for me, when a person is at their very best, when a person understands themselves, or when a person unlocks a new layer of understanding of self, you see it reflects, in their relationships, in their productivity and things like that. So I really think that society needs to shift from a position of imposing what they think we should identify as, or what they think life should be for us, and then just throwing out the words and saying, okay, these are the experiences we're observing, these are the labels for it, whatever you want to pick is fine, and whenever you want to change it is fine. If you decide you don't want to label yourself because you don't want to, for whatever reason it's also fine, really. Like, labels are a deeply personal thing, like Uche has mentioned. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Thank you, Edwin, for that question. Hello, Edwin. Can you hear me right now in real time? Your mic seems to be
There's a little bit of like network issues on my end, so my audio isn't really great. But the next question I want to ask is about how culture influences our perception of gender and gender identity. Nigeria is a largely patriarchal society, and our culture in Nigeria is heavily influenced by Islam and religion, even though we are finding out now that historically there were people who considered themselves, non-conforming, and there were people whose gender identity was non-binary or trans. In what ways do you think Nigerian culture influences our perception of gender identity today?
Question directed to. Okay. Okay. So I will start. Can you guys hear me? If you can hear me, just say aye. Okay. So as I said earlier, there's this disconnect, or a lot of Africans have, between them and their culture and our history. And this is due to whitewashing and colonialism. We understand that. But for us to get this, for us to get to a point where we know that queerness is not strange to us, there's a need to go back to our culture, and there's a need to go back to those pre-colonial period and know what really was happening then. I have been researching for a while about queerness in Africa and how queer Africans were treated in pre-colonial Africa, and it would be great to note that queer people were respected. They were seen as divine people, and they were not just anybody. They were seen as people who carried powers and who could transfer these powers to other people. And this is evident in the Noah people of Ethiopia. They believe that effeminate men. Effeminate men possessed some powers which they transfer to other men during the course of anal sex, and gender was not really fixed in that community. So there were a lot of effeminate males that did not see themselves as men. They did not see themselves as men, and they were respected, and they were treated the way they asked to be treated. And if we're bringing that home, we can also see that in some parts of Nigeria. We can see that in the northern part of Nigeria, where you see people dressing up, doing cross-dressing, it's great to note that cross-dressing is not new to us. You see people cross-dressing, and they even had a day of cross-dressing where men will come out and dress like women, and most of those men, most of those people, they weren't identifying as men. They were just males, and these people were still respected. So if we are looking at that and we are trying to compare that with what we have today, it is sad. It is very sad, because we are deeply rooted from our culture. And as Edwin said, our culture now is influenced by the two major religions here, which is Islam and Christianity. And for us to get away from this ditch, from this place which we are stuck in, there's a need to educate ourselves on history, educate ourselves on our real culture, because what we are practicing now is not our real culture. This is a white man's culture. Religion is a white man's invention. The main religion here are white men's invention. Islam and Christianity, they are all foreign to us. So if we really want to get to a place where queer people will be treated with respect as they were treated back then we need to reconnect to our culture. We need to know that these people had always existed in history, and they are not just anything. They can't be wiped away. We can't just be wiped away, and they will be here till eternity. So it is important to note that and educate other people, also educate ourselves. Like the problem here is that we don't want to invest in educating ourselves. We don't want to invest in educating ourselves. We want to be spoon-fed with information. And even when queer people do this, they bring those spoons and put information in your mouth. You still see people vomiting this information. They don't want it. They don't want it because colonialism has really done so much harm to us that we don't care. We just want to erase the next person that is strange to us. We just want to get rid of these people. Not
Hear me? I think we've lost Matthew again. I think he's trying to get back in. While we wait for him to come back in, Ross, I have a question for you. Okay. Oh, Matthew's back. Matthew, can you please finish your thoughts so we can move to...
Okay. Yeah. So queerness is indigenous to Africa and even in Nigeria. Yeah. So it is important to note this and start doing better with the way we treat queer people here. So these identities have always existed, non-binary, trans identities. We had a lot of trans people in history, and we even have this famous cross-dresser, Area Scatter. So it is, yes, as I said, it is vital to note this and start treating queer people better.
Okay, Ross, I have a question for you that essentially has to do with your organization and the work that it does across the continent, because there has been a lot of criticism around international organizations who come to Africa, especially when they come to advocate for sexual minorities and gender minorities like non-binary people, genderqueer people, and trans people, that there is a disconnect between the motives of these organizations and the needs of the individuals on ground who are being discriminated against? How does organizations like GLAD find the balance between the objective work they're doing in these communities and ensuring that the work is actually what the people on ground need, not what is assumed that the people in these communities need? Because one of the big conversations we've had over the last, I think, 5 to 10 years is, do Nigerians want gay marriage, or are they just comfortable, or do they just want to be accepted in their communities? And a lot of times when international organizations come to Nigeria to advocate for LGBT rights, a lot of the backlash comes from that idea that they are coming to enforce gay marriage on Nigerians. So how does organizations like yours navigate this disconnect, these expectations and the realities on ground?
That's an excellent question, and that's something that that I think about, and that we at GLAD think about a lot, to make sure that what we are doing is supportive and helpful and actually going to do good for the people that will that are going to experience it. So what has been my strategy has been, any international work that happens needs to be done in support of a local activist or a local organization, because only people that are on the ground can know what it is that they want to have or want to achieve. And GLAD has certain resources that can be helpful with that. Because we're a media organization, that's often where our help and work and support is. But locals will know what the media landscape is like within a country like Nigeria. They will know what the cultural landscape is. They will know where there is possibility to push for change and where it is better not to push in certain areas. And so it's really important for us that whatever we do is at the direction of an organization that is setting the strategy. We cannot set a strategy for another country. And I've tried to make sure that those partnerships are strong. I've worked with a couple different LGBTI organizations in Nigeria and listen to what they need and to figure out how GLAD can help support that. And also recognize that the things that we argue or fight over in the United States are not the same things that people are fighting or arguing over in other countries. And that the other thing that I've recognized is that if something happens in the United States, it ends up, and this is part of the colonial effect that Matthew talked about, if something happens in the United States, it does have impact in other countries. So if the United States achieves marriage equality, there can be a backlash experience because of that in the United States and around the world. If that's not the priority for local organizations, now they suddenly have to deal with it because it's something that we have created here. And one thing that we have seen for ourselves in the last 4 years of how much in the US we can backslide and lose a lot of rights that we did not secure because we're focused on something like marriage equality. And so the work that I've done with Nigerian organizations, the work that they've been focusing on has been social acceptance, trying to lift up leaders with skills around media, around law, around just where does acceptance come from, and if we can lend something. And so, for example, I've worked a lot with the BC Leamy Foundation. They have conducted research and polls, and they do that work. They find the narrative they want to do. GLAD helps to publish and push out that resource, that document, and helps them to get attention, sometimes outside of Nigeria, if that is what they think is the best method to do. And sometimes that is, but that has to be done in conjunction with an organization. And I think that's going to be very important for any international US group that wants to do international work. Cannot do it with our priorities. It must be the strategy and the priorities that are set by people on the ground. Did we lose Edwin again?
I think it's lagging.
We have lost our moderator. We are leaderless.
She's back.
I'll say this too, and if anyone wants to respond to it, feel free to. I think the other thing that we have found is helpful is that if there are people or stories that are not getting international media attention, GLAD can be helpful with that, but it takes a lot of thought about whether media attention is helpful or harmful, and often have a real conversation to make sure. Sometimes you don't want a lot of more attention, and sometimes they do. So I've had that conversation with either individuals or sometimes with organizations as well.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, welcome back.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I'm having audio issues, which is annoying, but we move. So to round things up, ask what would be an ideal situation for, essentially, what would be an ideal situation for young people who are currently struggling with finding their place when they do not conform to this expectation? Is this something that we can solve structurally? Is this something that we can solve through education? Is this something that we can enforce? Because people have a lot of suggestions, but we have a panel of people who personally experience these situations and who have the tools to effect change. So in your opinion, I'm asking everybody in the room, what do you think would be the best way to ensure that the next generation of non-binary, trans, and non-conforming young people have a better experience at living their gender identities?
Whose question is that?
Everybody.
Oh, okay. I think for me, actually, I think
Richard, I think you are still muted.
whenever I'm confronted with questions that has to do with, that's basically how I. So yeah, that combining kind of unique people are not experiencing. I think basically and I think we still have it here in Africa. It basically means we now have it in this panel. We have to get to the place where we make decision, then start implementing this each coming generation have things like so they will be able to relate these things are culture basically existed everywhere. We're educating people and putting some instances like this into materials that we consume as students from like this. If some time and has been in our culture for a very long a long time to actually already know, because these things are not documented, and I think to have this text who are, exposed to conversations, a community where people are become identify as it's no longer conversation movies schools just feel brain. I don't know what after, but weeks in. So things like things I'm going to after and then come out to act, see someone saying, think from consume there have been so I mean that's not to say to be creating informed general in this generation feel like you kind of look at it with an A. I mean now along the way positions,
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So, and then we had to feel with alien people. I feel justice about, and I think as community, the community feel secure and feel less in that there's something. So it's fine. I think younger ones, things like this one, it's bad, but to say this is making up stuff in UK, because for a while that already existed before they were already is own the next generation long. That's what it's going to be.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, Uche. Alex, do you want to add something before we go?
Yeah, just a brief. Thank you very much, Uche, for your point. It was very, comprehensive, and necessary. I agree completely with everything that you've said, but I'm just going to add that because you find that the materials are there and there are people who are actually willing to talk to people about their experiences, trans and non-binary people who are willing to speak about their experiences, but you find that there are, hardly any people who are, I don't know how to explain it. Before they even get to the point of being willing to be educated, they're just in a place where they just feel so. Already mentioned cis hetero entitlement or privilege.
Basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So they feel there's no need. Like if there's no problem with me, if there's nothing wrong with me, then why do I need to go out of my way to learn about other people's experiences or to learn how to respect them even? Because you find that there are even people who call themselves allies are constantly disrespecting trans and non-binary people. Constantly. It's as if they don't understand the concept of respecting, a human being for who they are. I can't is Alexandra and you say, no, I'm going to call you so and expect that we're going to have a good relationship from there going forward. So if we're all trying to, have a more cohesive community come together and say, okay, let's, demand better governance or demand better. If we're going to do that, aren't we supposed to prioritize the individuals that make up these communities and the many experiences that cut across gender, sex, race, race does not tribe, basically, and so on and so forth. It just seems to me like people are being too limited in their thinking, and we all need to really open up our minds and decide that we vigorously want to expand our worldview and understanding of the human experience, because it's constantly changing, and it feels like people who refuse to let go of their biases and their privilege will find that one day they wake up and they don't understand the world they're living in because they've refused to open up their minds. So I think the first step is having an open mind and prioritizing human beings, respecting human beings for who they are, regardless of what gender or what race or what sexuality they identify as. It doesn't, anyway. Sorry, that's all I want to say.
Okay, so Ross, do you think a little bit to what she said before we end the panel?
Yeah, I think all those points are important. And I thought when you asked the question, I just thought it's so hard because if there's not one thing to do, it's going to take many different things all at once. It takes understanding and education and awareness, which means people have to feel safe enough to be able to tell their own story and be into a space to be able to do that. There's a safety piece. There's a willingness to share that people may not have at a given moment or time. That builds understanding and awareness. Those things lead into laws and policies that further protect people, that then make it easier for people to share their own story. It's a whole kind of cycle. And it's I think multifaceted and many different things happening at the same time is the best way to go.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'd just like to quote Dominique Jackson. She says, Dominique Jackson is an actress on the TV show Pose. She says that she doesn't want permission from anybody because nobody has the right to permit her to exist. That what she wants is to be respected for who she is. And I think that until people learn to respect the humanity of other people, we're going to continue having these problems. So I guess as we educate, we should also educate with the viewpoint that every person's humanity is what should be respected at first before we start exploring the things that make them unique. If you respect someone's humanity, the odds are you will respect their gender their sexuality. For talking to us today on this panel. Thank you all for honoring the invitation of the Diversity Summit 2020. And I hope that the people who have listened to us speak today come away with a better understanding of gender identity and what it is like to live as somebody who is not cis identified in Nigeria. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Edwin. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.